Alright, video time. Yay. Yeah, so Piro, he's just just forget it. There's nothing to say. Left the reasonable person building altogether. So he doesn't make any specific arguments about anything. So he's just kind of, and then he's claiming he's not mushy. And then he's pointing to his subjects, which he doesn't say anything on. Like I say, he's big on thorium, but he really hasn't dealt at all with the fact. You could ask him questions like, well, if thorium was such a great idea, why aren't a bunch of companies like General Electric making thorium plants? I mean, it's good for them, right? They make money. So is that a conspiracy theory? They're conspiring to keep thorium off the market somehow? Like somehow they'd rather get irradiated and have their plants melt down when they could use this very safe, come on. So he doesn't deal with the subject in any specific way. And then his philosophical concepts are just mush words. I mean, philosophy, okay, what does that mean? Is that something like logic? Should it be like logic-based or fact-based, or do you just make it up? Skepticism, what does that even mean? Right? That's just the open mind argument. Well, your mind shouldn't be so open that your brain falls out. What does that even mean, skepticism? What should I be skeptical? I should be skeptical of Charles Darwin or something? Or, what evidence should I be skeptical of and what shouldn't I be? And I would argue that he has no clue because he obviously believes everything his preachers say and nothing the other preacher says. So clearly his skepticism is just based on what he wants to be true. Materials? What the hell could that possibly mean to a rational person? Relations? What the fuck does that mean to a rational person? Spirits? What does that mean to a rational person? And then he's got moralities. I don't even know what the hell he's changed that one, right? I just think it just used to be morality. But ethics and morality is the same damn thing anyway. So there's no value word in here. There's nothing like efficiency, waste, productivity, rational concepts. And then arts, might as well call it farts. It's just passing gas. It's just emotional mush. It only has value because we emotionally are caught up in the storytelling and picture displays and all kinds of crap like that. And there's some kind of aesthetics to it, maybe. The art of a beautiful woman, I might argue. But what does that have to do with creativity or any of that horse shit and blah, blah, blah? So he's just mush subjects. So anyway, he's just mush. He hasn't said anything in years that anyone could give a damn about. So anyway, I'll play this little clip and then we'll get to the two-slit stuff and just the arguments that could be. So there's so many arguments out there that have already been made that he has not answered any of them. And he's pretending like somehow he's sitting on some pile of rationality and evidence when I've been asking the same questions for 7 years that he still hasn't answered.
Or you can't see where I stand, or you're saying, oh, my ideas are all fluffy, like with physics. I believe everything is like waves, because
I believe everything's like waves, which again doesn't even say anything. Everything you mean like forces, so all the forces are waves. Bent space is a wave. Bent space-time. Time is all wavy too. Everything's waves, blah, blah, blah. So again, and who cares? You can believe that. But the only part that's got to be in some way connects me to what somebody else believes is what their argument is. I mean, if I'm on a jury and the other juror says, I think he's guilty, and I'm saying, God damn, the evidence proves he's innocent, well, that's a conflict that should be resolved. Okay, I mean, it's, you're pretending that it's okay to have these conflicts or something. No, I want to see your evidence. Why do you believe it is waves? When everything about what I see says, nah, that's just a dodge. I mean, a tiny fraction of the evidence indicates that. The majority of the evidence indicates something quite different.
Water waves, totally surreal and no place,
Surreal. So you're conceding that it's just not a very, it's not really connected to facts and what we reasonably see in the world. It's surreal. It's pseudo-real. It's fake.
Waves in water. It's
Yeah, so now we are back to the medium arguments. Okay, you're an etherist then. Why don't you just say that overtly, right? Wouldn't that be the honest thing to say, that you believe in a bunch of mediums? So you think there's a bunch of mediums all over the place, or one big medium that somehow is just being perpebated, okay, and that it perpebates in through us, and through this medium somehow flows through everything, and somehow gets thick medium here and thin medium there, and blah blah blah. Even though I've pointed out sort of that this geometry of this medium can't possibly work, so unlike water waves that have discrete particles that are responsible for the ups and the downs, you know, the movement, they're actually doing something to create the wave. So unlike water waves, your medium, your ether, can't have any kind of particularity to it. It can't have quanta, because then it's not going to have geometry that's going to be able to provide an option for straight lines. You're going to be out of luck. You're going to have all kinds of distance problems. The checkerboard problem. The diagonal isn't going to be the same number of units as the straight line. How are you going to fix that?
waves than it is like BBs bumping into each other.
Okay, so and I'm arguing that no, it's a lot more like BBs. And the harder you look and the better you look at the evidence, you see that all the evidence for waves is weak and mushy and feeble. Again, I can only make it explicit, right? Okay, let's say the only evidence for waves you had was the radar type experiments, radio wave experiments that are attempting to simulate the two-slit experiment without obviously simulating it properly. Now, the geometry for jamming is exactly the same as the geometry for wave interference. So here you have an explanation that points out how, yeah, we know radios can't tune two stations at once. You know, we know if the frequency is broken, that is, if you overlap two frequencies, the dumb radio can't tell there's two frequencies overlapped. It can't figure that out. So you can't tune in a signal where there's interference in phase interference. So jamming perfectly explains what's happening, but you would think, based on that experiment, that no, it's something else. The radio waves are somehow doing something that you don't see anywhere else. You can't make them bounce off of each other. You can't make them interfere with each other in any other way but through this phase change and how they're received on an antenna and how you have to tune to a frequency. And so, but you'd still believe they're waves, even though you have a perfectly satisfactory explanation, jamming. Would you?
I think, and that happens to be what mainstream science thinks, but
yeah, it just happens to be what lazy people who don't look at the evidence think, right? Isn't this all it comes down to? All right, the Eddington experiment got Einstein famous. Why don't you explain to me where the experiment was repeated? That's supposed to be one of the principles, the founding cornerstone of physics and science, is that you have to be able to repeat the damn thing. So where was it repeated? Where is the good evidence? And when we had the most perfect eclipse possible over the most technologically advanced country, blue sky perfect, right? No rains, no clouds, no mist, no problems. Nobody repeats the experiment. One of the most famous experiments in physics, on its 98th birthday, nobody repeats it. And that makes sense to you? You can't provide me, you want to feed me with some sort of explanation why an experiment's never been successfully repeated, that is dramatically successful, like well past the margin of error. And with all our technology now, 100 years after, nobody does the experiment. It's a guaranteed, you're on the cover of Science magazine, guaranteed. Any observatory that would have done it would have been on the cover of every science journal in America. There would have been cover stories all over the place about how this great experiment was finally done in a pristine manner, validating Einstein's theory, blah, blah, blah. And nobody did it? And you're going to tell me I'm a conspiracy nut because I find that amazing? Just plain amazing? That if you got this simple experiment, All right, doesn't cost a lot to do. You got the giant telescopes to do it. You don't have to carry them to Africa and carry them to South America. You can just look up at the sky and do the experiment, and nobody did it. And you don't think that's reason for skepticism about mainstream's credibility?
I claim to agree with mainstream science because I've seen mainstream scientists say there's no waves, that's just math, it's all particles. And I've seen...
Okay, so this is just more, this is why your arguments suck. This vague references to, well, I heard a once upon a time story, and I heard, this isn't a trial. You don't come to trial and say, well, there was a person on down the street who said he thought he was an axe murderer. That's good enough? That's all we need? Oh, okay, of course he's an axe murderer then, because somebody down the street thought so. I mean, mush.
Trying to say there's no particles, it's all waves, and the particles are epiphenomena. I've seen mainstream scientists go, it's all information. It's...
Yeah, where? I don't see any of that. So you say you see this stuff, there's no references to it. Who's saying that explicitly? I mean, even if they might say information theory is a better way to look at it, I don't think they would say, oh, it's all particles or it's all waves. I'm certainly there's no it's all particles, people. There just aren't. You can say there aren't any. Go show me the one. Show me some physicist who says gravity's a particle. Show it to me.
Particles, it's information that manifests visibly to us in certain ways. And on and on.
Information that manifests to us visibly in certain ways. Yes, that's exactly what the point is to argue about what's called the evidence. The evidence sitting on the table here that's going to convict or acquit. And again, you just don't give a shit one way or the other pretty much because you have your own little theory and that's all that matters to you. What the truth is and how well it's respected by the human race, who cares? How does that affect Pyrrho?
There's a lot of disagreement in mainstream science. What do I agree about in mainstream science? Well, the data. You can't just ignore...
Okay, the data. So this is exactly what I'm trying to get to, right? I've just been screaming for, let's see the evidence, all right? Show me this fucking evidence, the data. That's exactly what I've done, is I've gone out and looked for the data. Your data is all made out of mush. It's either incredibly weak evidence or it, in fact, doesn't exist. No one ever did the experiment. And you're claiming they did. You're claiming that we're outrageous. I have committed some crime against the truth by pointing out that no one ever made a detector for photons on the two-slit experiment. That never happened. It never happened. It's just a fact. It never happened.
The two-slit experiment by saying scientists are a bunch of liars and they've never actually even done that experiment over these...
They're just like you. They heard a story about it. They don't care whether it actually happened or not or if it's real evidence. They just accept. You're not a skeptic. You're a Borgite. Clearly, you're a fanatic, a religious fundamentalist fanatic. You don't give a shit about the evidence or the data because you don't have any.
Why? But I'm supposed to convince you otherwise.
You're supposed to provide a rational argument that's founded in something called, like you point to the evidence on the table and you say, look at this piece of evidence, look at this piece of evidence. And again, and when you've tried to do that, you've done it in this horribly distortive manner where you provide evidence that is junk and garbage. You provide a wave experiment that is clearly not done under the same conditions as the other one. I mean, you break another fundamental rule of physics, or experimentation anyway, is to always have a control and to obey the same rules. If you're going to compare two things, you don't put the apples in the freezer and then put the oranges in the fire and then say, well, look how different they are. That's idiotic.
I like following thought processes. Yeah, I'm interested in being playful about it because we ought to be playful.
Yeah, well, fuck you. Anyway, just nonsense. Well, anyway, he says more rubbish here, but I want to just stay on the subject. So let's go get to some of his evidence and his, this compelling evidence for which no one's even taken any. They just don't pay attention to what it's actually doing or what the actual facts are. Again, the two-slit math, where you switch the variables in the math. He talks about how it's the most accurate and proven and blah, 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 blah. And then, like I said, you just scratch at it a little bit, you can find all the flaws. Scratch at the Eddington experiment a tiny bit, full of flaws. And they just don't care. They don't care that it's weak evidence. They're just propagandists, period. And they're afraid of the fight. They don't make, like I said, when do I get my questions answered? When does one of you critics draw me a picture of how the wave goes through the interferometer? Why don't you show me how the wave goes through the interferometer? How's the damn thing work? You think it's doing something. Well, why don't you show me how it's doing it? Because, yeah, as soon as you draw that picture, I'll be able to point out how you don't understand physics at all. So, anyway. So ignorant. Alright, so this is the Royal Institute, and some little happy person, whatever, the happy physicist, doing a kid thing, I don't know, the Christmas lectures used to be serious lectures, not just, let's dumb it down for children, but anyway, so there was a related comment on the two-slit down here somewhere, so I guess I have to read all of that. All right. So anyway, so it says, I think your photon ball replacement theory works great with the above argument. Let me know what you think. Okay, and then he posts a link to the above link claims two photons can collide. Well, it doesn't really say that. And if so, the slits forcing them to collide more often could explain the subsequent on-off pattern. I don't even know how you think the photons are colliding when they're from the same source and they're diverging as they travel. How can they possibly be colliding with each other? It doesn't make much sense to me. How do things going the same direction at the same speed collide? Technically, this doesn't sound very probable. As for the smallest photon, whatever, they're around 10 to 12 m in width. Again, that's a frequency number. That has nothing. You don't know how wide a photon is. Well, all we know is the wavelength, the frequency. That's all we know about photons. No one has any clue about its size. The only thing that matters is its momentum. Photons deliver a certain amount of momentum. And the problem is, again, the word photon. I mean, how many times do we have to go over this? But this is a huge, catastrophic vocabulary problem. Because the thing's been called a photon as if it's one thing. Like all photons are alike. Yeah, the quanta is all alike. But the photons aren't all alike, right? The infrared ones are further spaced, meaning there's more quanta per inch, per per second, per whatever standard you want to apply. Obviously, the higher frequency will allow there to be more energy because it's compacted. It's taking up less space per quanta. So we have this word photon, but it's not really a very good word because photon means different frequencies and it means different lengths. The rays, there's rays of light, and the rays can have different length. So we have this stupid word that sounds like a particle, but photon is not a particle. It's a stream. So it's a faux ray. It's a, the word ton should be for the thing, the little bit, the quanta. So again, the word just breaks the conversation. And unfortunately, coming up with a new word is going to be really irritating. So we have to say something. It'll have to be a group of words, like light ray, a ray of light, instead of saying photon. And then we want to be specific about how much energy that ray has. Then we say a ray of light containing 56, quanta, or photons. Anyway. Well above the Planck length of 10 to the 35 m. Again, this idea, just because, see, they do things and then people just jump to the conclusion. So everybody's just jumped to the conclusion that because you know the wavelength, you know how fat it is. Like somehow the photon is a rectangle or a square. So whatever its frequency is, that decides how big it is. You know, it's like saying the cannonball, the distance between the cannonballs decides how fat the cannonballs are. Does that make any, why should that make sense to you? That's just a silly assumption. There could be smaller photons, but that is reaching the limit of gamma radiation. So again, it's frequency is not size. I don't know. So if you want to keep pretending it is, fine. The cannonballs, the quanta, are all the same for all of them. And all that really is at issue is, we know they have a constant speed, so the only thing really at issue is what their frequency is. The Planck length would be relevant, however, in determining how photons reflect off surfaces of slits. Says you. Though I think electron location would be more important in determining how photons' direction is changed. So again, I don't, just because I've brought up the idea that surfaces, you're not getting it, okay? I'm not arguing that the photon is bouncing off the surfaces. No way. Not enough of them would be doing that to create the pattern. You'd still have a ton of light going straight through, and you'd have such a tiny percentage of the light making the pattern, you'd never see it. So it has to be that they're just traveling along. All they have to do is be somewhere in the medium between the two surfaces. I mean, that medium could be, nanometers thick, where there's a bunch of electrons and pieces of atoms and all kinds of crap between those two layers. So whenever there's two surfaces connected to each other, we can see them as being smashed together, but they really aren't. There's a huge mixture layer between them. Clearly, and one could clearly understand that even if it's not exhibiting a huge static charge, everything's going to have a bunch of electrons on its surface. And those electrons are going to interact when you bring two surfaces together. All right. Okay, I think the more relevant idea is that the photons are colliding more often. So again, I just don't, I don't know why you think photons collide. There's no evidence you can make a photon hit another photon. They have to hit matter. They have to hit an electron. And an increase in the number of elastic collisions in any system with separate units of momentum, the photons could output a pattern. Yes, and so could collisions with electrons. Okay, so why don't you just make it simple, stupid? Sorry. You can see this pattern phenomenon with gases and liquids when you increase collisions. Yes, with actual matter. And also with dust and sand granules in some wind or sound-based situations. So you can do it with light also. We already know that we can take water droplets and make rainbows. We can take, we know we can just take very small pieces of material bits in a substance and we can create photons. Hit them with electrons and photons pop out. So anyway, photons have energy and thus mass by E equals mc squared. Well, I don't know why it would have anything to do with E equals mc squared, because E equals mc squared isn't defining what constitutes momentum. But clearly, okay, I mean the mass number, obviously mass and speed is momentum. But we clearly know photons convey momentum. So there really can't be an argument about them being massless, because that's sort of retarded. And also have mass by several other formulas, and thus momentum in a classical sense. They have momentum. There's not a classical sense. It's in an absolute sense. There's no doubt about it. The photon conveys momentum. No doubt. There's no way to question it. There's not a single piece of evidence that photons don't impose momentum. I know you agree with this. I'm just saying it for others. I don't know how many others are reading this. Apparently it is a trend to pretend the photon is massless since it is part of the electromagnetic field. Well, they're making it into something that perturbates, and therefore the perturbation doesn't have any mass because, it doesn't need to. But then, yes, your field has to have mass. There has to, you have to come up with it somewhere. You can't just play this silly game. And they want to make everything a point particle, which is that has no size, which is just retarded. But that's part of their fake math, okay? So again, I don't know what argument to make, except, yeah, their math is pretty retarded if it says something that doesn't have any substance can have momentum. And the Higgs field is ultimately supposedly responsible for mass. And again, and in some way that nobody rational can understand. All right, as for the thing, I mean, you know, we're talking about their belief that the Higgs field allows you to do conversions between the photon field and, say, the electron field. You know, but that's all it's for. It's just making conversions. But what do you need it for? Oh, that's right, you don't need it. It's just a preposterously silly way to draw a straight line. All right, as for single photon slit experiments, I don't think they exist. Well, of course they exist, so I don't even know, why would you make that argument? We already know that even with multi-photon experiments, as I'll show very shortly, a bunch of dots land on the screen, okay? Single photons land on the screen, so already you know that this whole wave crap is just crap. All right, you would need a machine to use an extremely small amount of energy. Well, you really don't. All you have to do is put a filter. So you could have a frickin' car headlight. And all you're really doing is creating a substance that's almost perfectly opaque to photons, but not quite. So every now and then a photon gets lucky and finds just the right path and pops out the other side. That's all you really need. But the trick to that is it pops out probably not straight, because you're not really using a transparent substance. You're using something that photons can sneak their way through. All right. So I just think you're wrong to think that you try to create a source that produces one photon at a time. No, you just try to create a total mechanism that creates one photon. So you don't have to put in one photon of electricity and get one photon to pop out. Although I think that's also possible. Where h is Planck's constant and f is the frequency. So again, you're worrying way too much about this, Planck numbers. For a single photon in the visible spectrum, that could not be detected. That could not be detected. Well, again, we're back to this whole idea of what is a photon. Is a photon this many quanta, or this many quanta, or this many quanta? The length is something nobody wants to talk about, but ray length is part of function. And if the ray length is too short, you won't get the effect that allows you to say, a photon landed there. It won't have the same effect. It won't energize the electron. It won't create the new photon as a reflection. And the energy will just be absorbed and eventually radiate from the substance as infrared. That could not be detected, reflected, or used by the other parts of the machine to be directed towards the slits in any substantial way except through maybe pure luck. Yeah, well, that's the whole point. Well, anyway, there's no point in arguing. The experiment was done. I mean, hasn't been done as often as it should have. I mean, there was a French guy who originally did it, and he let the experiment sit for 2 or 3 months. So, he set up the experiment with a photographic plate, went sailing for a couple of months, then came home and said, I've got a pattern. I don't think any modern machine could be engineered to do this at this point. Again, the fact that nobody else does these experiments, right? These are classic experiments in physics. I mean, this one is just, yeah, they want to do it in this new digital CCD camera way, and, they want to use all this technology. But it would be nice if somebody just did it the old-fashioned way. Put a photographic plate, create a little dark room, photographic plate, light, opaque substance that once in a while a photon can get through. And you just know how. See, if you make your substance in layers, then you can just add layers. If you're getting too much light, add a layer. Too much light, add a layer. And somebody ought to do the experiment just to have a nice diagram of how it works and watching it works. That would be great. But no, physics instead spends $10 billion to find nothing. Magical things that don't have any function except in abstractions. All right, so sorry. More than probably was necessary, but it's what it takes. All right, so I'm going to play this video, and yes, it's the audience is not mostly kids, so the kids are all in the front, but there are adults here, and it's just such crap. I guess we don't need this part. This volume adjuster is a bitch.
Welcome to the last of this year's Christmas lectures on time.
Excuse me, young man.
Well, who are you?
Well, I'm your older self, just visiting from the year 2050. And I didn't want to miss the lecture. I remember it was...
Oh, I didn't watch this, so I have no idea. I saw some of it. I didn't see this. Ugh, pathetic.
Good. So get on with it.
Wasn't even a very good joke, right? If you're going to bother doing that, you could have said something like, don't be sleeping with no hookers. They get you in big trouble in the future.
Travel. Fiction?
Well, he's probably not doing the hooker thing, right? He's doing the, what would you call it? I'm just trying to think of it. There probably is a name for it. I'm not remembering for, male hookers.
Or fact? But today we're going to look at exactly what it takes to make the impossible possible. And our journey is going to take us to the outer limits of what we currently understand about time.
Yes, so they're folding, right? Two-slit experiments, anything they could find into this warping of time bullshit.
Some of the hardest problems facing theoretical physics at the end of this century. So, hold on to your seats.
We're going to put on a magic show.
Well, our story starts with a duck pond. And with this man, Thomas Young.
All right, so again, we're back to this same old storytelling, right? So the man was Newton. Newton did the single aperture. He provided the world knowledge of the fact that it creates rings. Newton's rings. They're called after him. It's exactly the same pattern. And the slits, all they do is they eliminate from your view, okay, the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle, and so you just see this part of the Newton's rings. You just see a rectangle of it. But that's all it is. There's nothing new. So a guy shows up 150 years later, a sound engineer, okay, and all of a sudden we think he does an experiment that could possibly make a difference in some way, when it's something Newton had already done.
About 200 years ago, he was sitting by a duck pond, watching some ducks. And I have here a pair of ducks. We'll have a look at what Thomas Young saw.
You think somebody could have pre-wound them for you?
Just wind up my ducks. What he saw, as the ducks swam around, was a pattern appear in the water, which you can see down here. Now the pattern...
Well, you could, but when the ducks died, so you can't see it anymore.
by ripples on the water, leaving the ducks and interfering with each other. You can see it in a more controlled way Here we have a motor that's actually going to cause ripples, and it's going to pass through two slits.
So again, this whole idea that the two slits, this is the experiment they thought about first. And then later on, somebody pointed out, oh, well, Newton showed that that happens with one duck. You don't need two ducks. And so because they were so full of this two-slit magic, they couldn't recognize that, oh, so that's sort of evidence against this whole theory of there's an ether and it's all getting wave interference, because how can it possibly do it when there's only one slit? That doesn't make any sense. How do you make two photons, right? You can't have two pieces of energy go through the one slit, right? So who's interfering with who? How does the single photon, when it doesn't have two slits to break it into two, how does it make two patterns? Yeah, the whole theory falls apart if you start with the first fact, which is one duck interferes with itself, when it doesn't happen when it's in a pond. Yeah, that don't happen. So the positive evidence is glorified, and the evidence against is ignored.
And these slits are going to produce ripples which go out into the water and actually interfere, very much like with the two ducks. You could see a pattern emerging.
So you could just wonder how he would do this if he did it with a single slit. So he's sitting here with his water tank with a single slit, and he's saying, well, yeah, it doesn't work. I get nice round waves. But if I put 10 ducks over on this side of the slit, so there's lots of different kinds of waves coming through the slit, well, then I can create interference if I make a bunch of extra waves. I mean, it's just pathetic. I'm just saying, if he started with the single slit and he said, look, I'm going to try to convince you, okay, that light's a wave by showing you how it doesn't look like waves in water at all. Yes, light's completely different. Yeah, I don't think there'd be the same argument, would it?
Here, along this line, two ripples are adding up. So you're getting bright and dark lines. But here, it doesn't look like anything's happening. That's because the waves, the ripples, have actually cancelled each other out.
And again, there's no canceling each other out. So we know that we have to conserve the energy. So there's no canceling out the energy. The energy has to go somewhere. So if two things cancel each other out and they stop and they don't reflect off of each other, then the energy had to go somewhere else.
Now, this made him pretty happy. First of all, because he liked ducks. But second of all, because it reminded him of an experiment he'd done a couple of years earlier with light.
So that makes absolutely no sense to me, but okay. But this is, more, who knows what the truth is.
I'm going to show you now what he saw with his light experiment. Here we have something very similar to the pond and the two ducks. Actually very similar to that tank with water and the two slits.
Okay, and similar only in the most superficial way you can imagine, right? No way to think about it any other way. I'm not swimming in a sea of water molecules. Water molecules aren't waving to me. All that crap isn't happening. There's no evidence that there's any mediums anywhere, because we can't detect them in any way. We can't swish something through them to, make them do something. Again, you can't bend a photon with either magnetism or electric fields. Neither one will bend a photon, yet they call it electromagnetic. Why is that? Oh, the only reason why it happens is because they hit electrons. You don't need to be a wave to hit an electron.
So here we have something that produces light. And the light passes through two slits, actually very close together, because light is a very short wavelength, a very small wave.
A very small wave. No, it's very tight. Okay, tight.
Can't actually see these two slits, but it's the same idea. And then the light passes on and hits this screen. You can actually see a pattern that's quite similar to what we saw on the tank with the...
You know, it's not similar at all. You didn't show us the pattern on the tank wall. All right, so, and yeah, it's not that similar actually. You know, the little quiet pieces are much narrower than the up and down pieces. And so the part he's not going to explain here is the traditional two-slit pattern. That is, the little dots are in groups. And look how, I mean, this isn't, you know, frankly, for the later on, this guy's going to have some pretty good technology, and this is the best he can do. I mean, look how bad this image is. But you can see the grouping, okay? There's a group of 4 here, and a group of 3 here, and a group of 3 here, and a group... So clearly there's 2 patterns. He's not going to tell us why there's 2 patterns. He's not going to show us that the ducks create 2 patterns, because the ducks don't create 2 patterns. So what is that other pattern from? Where does that come from? And what's all this other crap all over the place? What are all these other little slit experiments happening all over the place here? What are those? I would argue these are just images, right? So each little dot is just an image of the laser. You know, he's got a pretty small laser, I think, pretty intense. And it's going straight through. That's why his dots are round. It's because the laser's smaller than the slit. So you're keeping the roundness. And they're just images. They're just images of the beam being deflected. Each photon comes in to the experiment, and it's deflected by a specific angle. And it's just multiples of that angle. And so you just recreate whatever goes into the slit gets recreated at each one of those angles. It's just an image of the laser beam. If you put an image on the laser beam, I would argue, right? They can do that nowadays, right? They can put a little, they can give the laser beam an actual texture. So they could shoot the laser beam through a transparency that puts an image on it, and then do this experiment. And I'll bet you get little, like if you put Donald Duck on there, you get a bunch of little Donald Ducks. Did they do the experiment? No. They have a ton of technology and a ton of money. How come they don't do these experiments? Oh, that's right, because that wouldn't be consistent with their wave theory. That wouldn't be corroborating evidence, and that's all they want to show you. They just want to show you the experiment in the condition that proves their point, like a Pyrrho. They just want to cheat the evidence. They're just propagandists. They want to validate their bullshit. They don't want to demonstrate how it's weak and that there's conflicting evidence. They're presenting it in light for the purpose of propaganda, not for the purpose of understanding.
And there are regions of bright and dark and bright and dark and bright and dark.
No, there's regions of clump, 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 and then there's on, off, but it's clearly very on and a little bit of off. Very on, a little bit of off. Okay, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. The math says the pattern should be a beautiful gradation from intense light to dark, intense to dark, intense to dark. It's supposed to be a gradation. It's not supposed to be dots. They're not supposed to be images of the beam. They're supposed to be completely wave-like in appearance. And they're not. Why aren't they? What's the answer? Why do the facts not add up to what they say they are supposed to add up to?
So this set him thinking, well, if I saw the same pattern as I saw on water...
So as I understand, Young did the experiment without a laser beam. He did it with sunlight. He put the light through an aperture, a tiny hole first. Okay, right? So he's putting it through one of Newton's small apertures before it even gets to the experiment. And because he was using white light, his pattern was just a bunch of overlapping shifts in color. Blue shift, red shift, you know. And there were little circles, like the sun. Circle. Again, not explained. Why are they circles? There's nothing in the math that says they're supposed to be circles. And clearly in other experiments you see clear bars. So why in this experiment are they circles? Did they explain that to you? No. They don't say a thing, right? Nothing.
I know that waves travel on water. That must mean that light is a wave.
There you go. So that's all the evidence they need. And again, if this was the radar experiment I just pointed out jamming, you know, fits the exact geometry. You're just talking about two things hitting out of phase and what's the consequence of that. And in their opinion, when light's in phase, blah, 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 this happens and the rest. And again, they're saying that water and light and electrons and atoms are all the same thing and they're all going through this experiment and having the same experience. No, they're all behaving differently because they're hitting differently. The photons are hitting electrons and getting bent. The electrons are hitting electrons and getting bent, so it looks different. The buckyballs, the little atoms, are hitting electrons, which are much smaller, and getting bent even less, which the pattern demonstrates. The pattern gets worse and worse as you make the things bigger and bigger. Because obviously the thing they're hitting is getting smaller by relative comparison. Its momentum is becoming less and less relevant. And then when you get to the radar experiments and the radio experiments, they're completely bogus because they don't even have to use slits. There's no physical impediment to break the waves into pieces. Nothing to create a wave function. And yet they're still saying they're interfering.
After all, particles wouldn't do this. Let's have a look at what particles would do.
So again, so now they'll mock particles by saying this is particles. We're going to show particles in this light, and we're not going to show particles in any kind of fancier way that might indicate particles are quite capable of being deflected. Let's understand, water is particles. They're just particles that are stuck to each other. But the whole reason why there's waves in water is because water's made of particles.
For this I need a volunteer with a lot of puff. Could you come down? Your name is?
Doofy Smadoofy. He's probably 30 years old now.
Jay, could you stand here? Now what you're going to do is you're going to blow through this tube, and here is sand.
See, they really don't need these, you know, this whole participation crap is just such a waste of time.
Now sand consists of grains, particles, lots of them. And they're all packed in here. And as Jay blows, he's actually going to blow sand through this box, up against these two slits, and the sand can pass through these two slits, very much like two slits we had with light.
Right, but not very much like the actual experiment, and the fact that now he's engineered the experiment to get the result he wants. If he made the openings wider and he made them closer together, yeah, he's going to get a more complex pattern. But yes, he's chosen to make it look a certain way. Just like when they do the single slit experiment, they choose this, you know, the tiniest aperture possible so they can create this dull pattern of just blob, blob, blob. And, you know, all they have to do is make it open a little bit wider and they get line, 40 bars. So, yes, engineer the experiment for the purpose of the propaganda.
And on the back here, we've got a screen which is going to collect the particles of sand as they go through the slits.
Obviously a sticky screen.
So, huff and a puff, and blow through the tube, Jay. Keep going.
So
Great.
he could have used like say if he used little pieces of paper or something, right? You know, things that could have gone through the slits and been bent by the air waves, you know, and bent by something. You know, again, just you know, do the experiment in a manner to show it in the least wave-like light, you know.
You can do it a little bit less. That's it. That's great. Thanks very much. Go Go back to your seat.
Yes, applause. I mean, really, is there some point to this? It's so patronizing. I mean, I don't know, you know, thank God I guess I missed all of that in my life, you know, where I got to be a hero because I blew it into a tube.
I'm just going to show you what's on the screen. And this is it. It's not really a surprise. There are two stripes, very much like the two slits.
Well, there are some surprises, though, aren't there? There's a whole bunch of sand in the middle there, isn't there? How did that get there, right? There's no place for it to go. It couldn't go through this slit and get in the middle. How did it get in the middle? Oh, it must have bounced off something, huh? I guess so.
Sand consists of grains, like little particles, and they either go through one slit or they go through the other slit. And that's what you're seeing. These particles have gone through one slit, these have gone through the other slit.
So again, we know this slit has nothing, the two slits have nothing to do with it. This whole question of the photon going through two slits is just bullshit, because we know the pattern's created when a single photon goes through a single slit. You know, and there are no two slits necessary. There's no need for the photon to go through two slits to interfere. It clearly goes through one slit and interferes with itself. So why this conversation? Again, this isn't a manipulation and a distortion to present this evidence as if this two thing is so important and somehow the photon needs something to break it into two things, when you know you can't use that irrational argument with the single slit. And it's exactly the same pattern, except it doesn't have two patterns superimposed on it. It's only the one pattern, the bars. The on-off pattern, clearly there. I mean, this is so deceptive, and for people to defend this, why are they defending this? Why are they defending this when this is so logically flawed? The logic here is so flawed. There's no rational reasoning taking place here to sit there and say, I'm going to say it's the same thing. I need two slits in the two-slit experiment because I need to break the photon into two wave functions, and but I don't need any impediment in the single slit. And I'm still going to get two waves that interfere with each other. But there's no rational mechanism that's consistent. That's why their math has to change the variables for the two experiments. Because there's no consistency in this logic.
So this is what sand does, and this is what particles do. They produce this pattern, and it's unlike the pattern that you get with waves.
And again, it's unlike the pattern you get with waves when you use one slit with light.
Now we're going to try something a little different. We saw the pattern that light produced. It's nothing like the sand. But here we've got essentially the same piece of equipment as before, but we're going to turn the brightness of the light down. Here we have the source of light over here. And it's passing through two slits, but we've had to cover this up because we don't want any light to get in. The light passes through the two slits, goes over to the other side. Instead of a screen over here, we've actually got a camera, because this detects really low levels of light. I'm going to see what we see. Actually, up there on the screen, you can see what the camera's picking up.
Yeah, it'd be nice if he had at least a picture on the screen of what the thing looks like inside. You know, he could have just shown a picture of it before it was covered.
The first surprise is it's picking up dots, blips.
As we wonder how many lenses are in there, what other shit he's using to pull this off.
This is light travelling through this, but it's arriving as blips, like the sand, as particles. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing that you don't take that seriously as, well, that's probably going to mean something, isn't it? You know, the fact that that's the way the light is arriving. And that it would be just kind of silly to say the light turns into something completely different, does a bunch of kind of complex geometric math to figure out where the little dot is supposed to be. It just sounds kind of ludicrous. Photons are better at math than we are.
But have a look at this. If we collect up all these blips collected over a time period and have a look at what the pattern is, we see something quite remarkable.
So now we don't have any circles. So what happened to our circles? How come they're not circles anymore? Does anybody ask the question? Nobody asked the question. Shouldn't they be circles? What did you change to make them not circles? And again, what are you seeing? Are you seeing this have a very bright center and then it gradually goes to dark? No, you're seeing bars start to arrive.
The pattern you see is the pattern that waves make. But the light arrives in blips, in packets, as small particles, which physicists call photons. So this is...
So, and again, the small particles aren't a particle. So a photon isn't a photon. We already know that. We already know that a certain amount of energy has to arrive, more than one quanta, more than one photon. A certain amount of energy in the ray form has to get there for the electron to be stimulated in the matter necessary to create the electricity that creates the a photon hit me. It doesn't say a photon hit me until enough little bits hit it.
Incredible, because the light's traveling, making a pattern as though it were going through two slits. Because remember, to make that pattern, that wave pattern, they've got to be two sources.
See, so again, is that being at all honest? I'm just saying, the people who defend this is physics being taught. Is that at all honest? When you know the pattern is created by an aperture, a hole. You just make the hole smaller and you create the pattern. No two slits required.
The light's got to go through both slits, and yet it's arriving as a blip, as a particle, like the sand. This is the essence of the weirdness, of the spookiness in the quantum world.
Right, and so they're just mocking the word spooky. Okay, right? You know, but yeah, that's what it sounds like magic. It looks like magic. It looks like there's a gimmick. And you're just not, I don't care. I like pulling pigeons out of my sleeve. But that's all this is. This is just you're overtly denying the fact that you don't have much evidence. This is a very weak illustration of reality, because if I just show you a single slit, it's going to make this whole experiment look stupid, because you're definitely going to be more confused by that single slit. That single slit's going to be beyond explanation. You're going to say, what do you mean? One photon goes in, the single photon breaks in two, interferes with itself, and lands in one location. That sounds like a preposterous fairy story.
Now, physicists have been debating these aspects of quantum physics throughout this century.
All right, they haven't been debating it throughout this century, okay? The debate was over when, New York Times headlines for Einstein on his bent space woo, and once people accept that much woo, the rest of this woo is almost no woo. But where's the debate? I don't see any debate among physicists that's anything rational. All they're debating is between their own silly, wooey explanations. So you have the Copenhagen one saying, what the hell is it saying? That's this wave model. And then you got this many world one where the photons create new universes. And, and then you got the Feynman one where the photon goes to every location in the universe because it's somehow possible even when it's not. And it decides to go the shortest distance. You know, so it says all the other places are too far away, so I'll go with a shorter one. Something like that.
1927. Actually, there weren't that many physicists around, and here they all are. In a conference in Solvay, there was a great debate about what exactly was going on in the quantum world. And in particular, this man, Albert Einstein, who won a Nobel Prize for showing that light was actually a particle.
Right, but we're going to just ignore that also. We'll just ignore all the evidence that's been compiled where photons and all the other experiments is when you're not forcing them next to a surface. In all the experiments where you're not forcing them next to a surface, they seem to behave in a completely different manner. Point A to point B in a straight line.
He was actually made up of these photons. He didn't like this strangeness of quantum physics, the quantum world, whereby the particle somehow seemed to go through both slits at the same time. I mean, which one was it going through? Surely it goes through one and not the other, and somehow we've just got...
Yes, and surely some of them, one of those physicists should have heard of Newton's rings. So wouldn't that just end this two-slit nonsense? And shouldn't they just be talking about then, well, what's the mechanical mechanism? What happens when you make a hole smaller and the light spreads more? Well, what's happening? Oh, well, the odds of the photon going right next to the surface is what's increasing when I make the hole smaller. So as I make the hole smaller, the odds of the photon hitting next to the surface go way up, okay, by a factor of like 4. You know, the whole opposite of the inverse square law. You know, and they spread more. So, but yeah, no, let's not associate those two things with each other. That would be illogical. It'd be illogical to think the surfaces have something to do with it. That's silly.
Interpretation of the experiment wrong. Well, he thought that the way out of this problem, of course, one has to remember at that time they couldn't do any of these experiments. Only these experiments were...
Bullshit. So yeah, they could do lots of experiments. They didn't bother doing them either. They just thought about them. They just thought about experiments they could do. Well, what if we detect the photons? Oh, you can't detect a photon. Well, that doesn't matter. What if we could detect a photon? Well, it would still be undetectable because of Heisenberg's rules.
Impossible. Very recently, because of developments in technology. But he went through a process of thought experiments. And
I tell you what, do the experiment. Put Daffy Duck on your laser beam. Okay, shoot your laser beam through an image of Daffy Duck and see if you can make a bunch of Daffy Ducks.
there was something missing in our picture of quantum.
Because you can with a diffraction gradient. Okay, so another thing that's causing the same kind of effect. Well, with that, you actually can. The image does get superimposed. So your bar pattern is reduced to major bars. Okay, so you have much fewer of them, but they're much further spaced apart. And if you do put an image in, you get an image out. They're just duplicates of each other. They're just duplicate images of whatever you put through the grading. So here you have another piece of evidence that sort of indicates that with light, in this phenomenon, that what you're doing is just sending photons to specific locations, and there's no interference, because interference would destroy the image.
That somehow these particles of light knew themselves inside which slit they would go through. It's just that we somehow couldn't detect that. We couldn't pick that up.
No, no, they knew which slit they were going through because they're heading right for it. They don't really have a choice. So yeah, they went through one slit. Yes, they did.
Now, he knew it would be really difficult to take a particle of light and actually kind of look inside it.
You don't need to look inside a particle of light. What you need to do is look inside the surface of a slit, and then you might realize that it's made out of atoms, and that atoms aren't tables. They aren't flat surfaces. atoms are electrons and protons, and so that's all this surface is made out of, is a little glob of, you know, mostly empty space with a few little lumps in it. And that's what the photon's traveling through, is a little lumpy space.
So he set up the following thought experiment. He imagined the following.
Yes, imagined, fake, phony, you know, not real.
Now, just as nowadays, psychologists, when they're trying to work out the character of somebody, they may take a pair of twins and actually separate them out and look at what one does and see if the other one does something similar. Well, that's the type of experiment that he imagined doing.
Right. For what reason, I don't know. So this history has to be a little bit messed up. So see, somehow he's going to now transition into time dilation, which is Einstein's woo theory. So here he's going from the quantum mechanic woo that Einstein found offensive, and he's perverting it into Einstein's bent space woo. So it's just such a weird diffraction of logic here. But that's I just wanted to do the two-slit part of this. The time dilation part is unnecessary just because it's clear that nobody really recognizes what's so obvious in Einstein's two equations or theories, is that speed, okay, whether it's from acceleration or velocity, is what breaks clocks. You're not breaking time, you're just breaking clocks by moving them. And that's what gravity does. Gravity doesn't bend time. Gravity gives you momentum, and your momentum breaks your clocks. And acceleration more so than velocity. And acceleration is what we're doing when we're sitting right in our chairs here. We're accelerating. It's just a fact. You couldn't dent the ground. You couldn't smush your comfy cushion with your fat ass, okay, if you weren't actually moving. So even though you don't feel like you're moving. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And if you're moving up and down, and then you're moving in a direction. See how long that line is? Up, down, up. Much longer than this line. So you think your velocity is this, but no, your real velocity is this. You're doing all of this motion in the same amount of time it takes to do this, which means you're going really a lot faster than you think. The little bits inside of you are moving a lot faster than you are. And they're the part that are keeping the time. And that's how the time gets broken. Just so obvious that's the right answer. Jeez. I don't know how you people can resist these facts, as I have gone to the trouble to compile them and put them together for you. How can you resist the obvious logic? They've clearly overlooked some details in their expedience to get to their wonderland. And you can see it in these presentations that clearly the truth isn't what's important. Molding, quote mining the facts is the only business they're in. Clearly propaganda. Clearly distortion, clearly a misrepresentation of the actual history and the actual experiments and their actual demonstrated effects. So Pirro has that somewhere in his video. I guess I'll have to play that, because he implies that somehow other people aren't paying attention to the facts or the details. It's just evil. He's the one who doesn't pay attention to details.
They go on for thousands of years, and we're the ones that like to debate them, so we should probably maintain a way of continuing to talk about them. And it seems to me that...
Yeah, so it's another thing with Pirro. He thinks this is fun. Like, we're in this because it's fun. I never made a video, I don't think. Well, maybe there's a couple. for fun reasons. Okay, they're always in a mission to correct what's wrong with what's going on, either in our civilization or in what it thinks wrong. That's what I'm here for, to fix what's wrong.
For me, is that you guys aren't up to it. People aren't really up to it. I mean,
It's just so what a lame. This like I said, he hasn't made a video that was on that had any detail, did anything, just mushy, silly talk. Hasn't made a statement or done anything in years. And he's talking like everybody's running. No, everybody's boring, and you don't have an argument. You don't present any evidence. You just say, "I think he's guilty because I say so."
say, hey, I've called some of Hythlodae's ideas fucking ridiculous or whatever. Mocked it in the moment. Gary does that every single time he replies to anybody, certainly.
Right, because you're all fucking idiots. But I don't do it every time, so that's another lie, right? I mean, the truth is, if you say something rational, I'll agree with it. But I can't even be on your side on the things we agree on because you believe it for the wrong reason. You don't even understand the principles involved. You want to tax the working rich. I want to tax the loafer rich. The ones who didn't do a damn bit of constructive works. The ones who deserve no reward because they didn't earn any reward.
Hythlodae. So that's not it. It must be something about when I explained where my reaction was coming from, right? And it comes down in the end to this crazy...
Yeah, your reaction comes from your 13-year-old adventures in Jedi fun. It doesn't have anything to do with anything rational. You don't dissect your logic anywhere and show us how you get from point A to point B at all.
Going on of... Because I'm a skeptic, so I know everybody...
And again, there's nothing skeptical. He's not skeptical as long as you agree with him, okay? So if he thinks there's unicorns, he's not skeptical of any of the unicorn evidence. He's just such horseshit skeptic, my ass.
Own different version of ideas, and nobody can actually, and we don't share an idea. We're copying ideas from each other. Like, you don't share
I said more bullshit. I'm not copying nothing. I'm saying, what's the fucking evidence? Let's make the argument. The evidence pyramids. Let's make them and see which pyramid is taller and which one's made out of real shit, not fake shit. And as I've demonstrated in these videos, all of your pyramids, all of your evidence is garbage. Eddington is garbage. The two-slit experiment's garbage. The interferometer, as you theoretically think it works, is garbage. You have no understanding of the mechanics at all. You've never cared. You've never had enough skepticism to think about it one tiny little bit. You just accept, oh, it's a beam splitter. Okay, you told me so.
actually taking a copy of that image is how that's actually working. So everybody's idea is inherently unique and largely more unique than they know. And when you have normal people that all think they...
So more horse shit about how this uniqueness has something to do with evidence, and it doesn't. So there's people who can defend their bullshit and people who can't defend it. In my opinion, your defenses are lame, weak, pathetic, unsourced mush. And just most of them made out of propaganda lies, essentially. Yes, lies.
My idea, they don't really. If you ask them, you can find out their ideas are different. People that think they agree, it's just that they haven't dug in to where they disagree. And so saying everybody believes what they want, you'd think that would be okay. But no, because it's like, look, velocity is relative. But it doesn't mean you get to choose whatever velocity, right? All the stuff in physical relative.
So it's just more mush around the edge talk, right? The simple argument is all opinions are not of the same quality. That's the simple argument. Nobody rational could disagree. There's people who base their opinions on evidence. They say, show me, convince me, I want to be sure. And there's people who say, no, I'll believe anything, okay, as long as somewhere in the story I get the chicks. They don't care about the truth. They just care about a payoff.
It's still measurable. The fact that time is measurably going at a different rate in another inertial reference frame, whether you believe it.
So, yes, right. There's no point in saying that time is going at a different rate. All you need to say is that there is some distortion in either the mechanics of the physical world or in the perception of the measuring devices. You could limit how wrong you can be and how you're going to state it. But instead you say something like, yeah, there's a different time. No, there's not a different time. There's broken clocks.
If you do believe it, it doesn't mean that the time is flowing at however you say. Oh, it's going fast. It's going slow. I just ate an apple and the sugar's making me hyper. And look, everything's going slow or it's going fast. Or
yes, and that's a very good analogy. Maybe you ought to stick with analogies like that because that's sort of true. And even the temperature one is even, in my opinion, even a better way to think about it is that the time dilation is really about temperature dilation. And so, yes, you know, the whole idea of time dilation is, yes, cryogenics essentially. The faster you go, the colder you get, the more, you know, the slower the syrup.
whatever I want to say. I'm going whatever speed. Because velocity is relative, so I'm going 1 billion miles an hour relative to that rock. No, you have a particular speed relative to the rock. It's just measurable from your point of view. So you have to measure it. It doesn't mean you get to believe whatever you want.
Yes, you can't measure it. That's the point that's being argued here, is that there's no way to create a device that can cross these barriers to measure this time, because it has to move the distance to measure the time, and it can't move the distance without taking time to do it. So it can't measure two things in two different places without distance getting in the way. So we can't measure it. But yes, if you could, you'd find out that there is an absolute. There is motion and there's non-motion. There's no temperature and there's high temperature.
You get to believe any conspiracy theory. And, you know, there's flat earth and aliens and NASA's controlling the weather and on and on. But the worst conspiracies are just these ones like immigrants are raping everybody and stuff like that.
And those conspiracies wouldn't even exist if you idiot knee-jerk liberals wouldn't do something stupid like, well, we have to protect the illegal aliens who are criminals from being deported for breaking the rules. Now, if you weren't making excuses for the rule breakers, then the argument would go away quite easily, and just saying, yes, we're all against rapists. But it's like, you're for the rapists, for fuck's sake. If, as long as they're from a foreign country, oh yeah, let's give them 17 trials and let's give them a better prison to live in, and, you know, make it all nice and comfy for them. I mean, you're acting quite preposterous. Not only did they violate our laws, they violated the very principle under which immigration should be possible, which is you don't break the law. You don't come here and break the law. That breaks the contract. You're not allowed to stay here then. Shit. That's not hard to figure out.
All of that's, you know, your IQ, realism, all of these are really just kinds of conspiracy thoughts, memes that plugged into people's heads, and now that's inside. Its little tentacles are going out trying to see.
I mean, even if you said something like, okay, we're not going to deport somebody for parking tickets, but why wouldn't you deport somebody for overt malicious attacks on civilization? I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. All crimes are the same. No, they're not. Dumbass.
In terms of the way it already believes. And you just want to believe whatever you want to believe, and I don't. I want to.
So more lies. Yeah, you know, you're the one who doesn't have a fact to cling to. You got nothing. You got empty accusations, and that's all you've got. You've got nothing. If you could, like I said, if you could make an argument, there'd be something I could argue with, but there's nothing. You put up nothing as evidence. Zero evidence. Just a bunch of jargon and bullshit.
I believe. Trying to find ideas out in the real world that can change what I believe. But having done that, being 51 now and been doing that, I guess, forever, since my childhood, It's gotten real.
You've done it really badly, and you're a huge, colossal failure at logic. Because you don't understand that it has to be based on facts. Can't do logic without good information. Garbage in, garbage out. Propagandist.
For you to do that. Whereas when I tell you why your idea that scientists have been lying about one of the most basic...
I'm sorry. The fact is that if they don't... There's only two choices. Either they're preposterously ignorant of their own field of study. I never heard of Newton's rings. What's the excuse? Or, yeah, they got to be engineering a propaganda. And I've shown the experiments. I just showed a guy doing it with the electron beam. First they put in the argon gas just to make things a little more complicated, right? Because now as soon as you put atoms into the experiment, then, well, yeah, you're only going to see the electrons that are moving the atoms, obviously. So you're not going to see the electrons that aren't. And the atoms are getting moved. I'm just saying, it just confuses things. But again, I showed the two versions. And again, I've pointed out how the radar experiment is perfectly the same exact math, all right, explains it for jamming. And so jamming's the simple explanation, and you're clinging to the silly explanation, when the jamming one is completely tight, solid as an explanation. There's no way around it. The fact is that is going to happen. Radio signals do get jammed exactly this way, by creating out of phase signals. That's exactly what will happen.
Experiments claiming to have done it, but they haven't.
So again, he keeps saying these kind of things, and neither me nor Hothliday, will you cite the experiment we did that to? You lying sack of shit. So again, just so weak. He can't cite, he will not quote anybody saying that about an experiment that actually did happen. So go ahead and do that, Piro. Quote where I said an experiment never took place, and then show the experiment taking place. Prove it, you liar. You scummy liar. Why don't you prove one of your accusations, you scummy liar? See, that's just trolling. I mean, when he gets away with saying something he has no evidence for, it's an outright lie, it's a slanderous lie, it's a malicious lie. You know it's a fucking lie, you fucking liar. Because if you had the evidence, you'd show it. You liar.
I don't understand that maybe, there's something wrong there. You shouldn't just believe whatever you want. There's evidence in the world, and you could change by pulling it in.
Yes, right. And so I should accept the existence of evidence that doesn't exist. I should accept that experiments were done that weren't done, because some physicist said so. And he's not a liar. He's just stupid. He just didn't know that Newton already put a single hair and shot light across it. He didn't know that. Unimportant detail.
I have been making that argument about pi being sort of indefinite because...
Oh, okay. Well, now he's going on this pi thing again. It's just so stupid. I don't think it's indefinite, frankly. It has a Planck ending. Somewhere in the Planck length is where you'll find the last digit in pi. But anyway, idiot. Lying sack of crap. So again, it's just a lie. I mean, it's nothing I can say. What do I say in my defense, right? He's saying I have to prove myself innocent of this stupid lie. How do I do that? How do I regain my my integrity from this malicious lie? Do I have to actually show every single? Do I have to show every clip where I pointed to an experiment that never got done, that actually never has been done? And then that's still not proving that there wasn't some time where I maligned some real experiment. Well, go ahead. Somebody find the evidence, please. I mean, it's just such an outrageous lie because, yes, it just doesn't happen. Every experiment I said had some skepticism about. I was right. Shit. it's just disgusting to be such a liar. Fucking pedophiles. I don't know how these fucking dog fucking pedophiles get away with this shit.